We are changing the charging port on a Moto Nexus 6 motherboard. I already took the board out of the phone. I'm not gonna go into details on how to disassemble the phone and how to take the board out. You can look it up on YouTube. I'm sure you'll find a lot of videos. We remove the cover and then we unscrew like 6,000 screws from the back here. Once that is done, we can pry the screen away from the phone like this. So that's how we take out the board from the Moto Nexus 6. And now I want to go over how to change the charging port on this phone. We have one pin soldered here, one here, one here, and one here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what makes this repair tricky are the two components that you see in front of the connector. 1, 2. A lot of people would use hot air to remove this connector. I never use hot air without using low melt solder first, because hot air is going to melt everything on that board. You have components surrounding the connector. By trying to remove this component with hot air, you're going to melt everything in here. You may move components from here, or you may even lose the two components that you have here. I mean, honestly, we cannot get our soldering iron to solder the connectors without touching those two components. So I do have a very thin soldering tip, this one here. We can get inside nicely. You know, I'm not gonna remove those two components, but if I feel like we have to, then I'm gonna remove both of them. We'll fix the connector and then we'll put the components back on. What I will be doing now, as you see me do in many of the videos, I will apply low melt solder on all the joints, 1, 2, 3, 4, and some inside here. I do not want to create a mess where we lose this component or the component gets sucked up by the solder blob and stuff like that. Start with this one here. So we're just soaking the joints with the low melt solder. Just need to be able to melt some low melt solder on those pins. Once I do that, then I'm all good. Look at this. I mean, the solder wire is bigger than the component. So how are we gonna do this? Okay, I melted some solder on the tip. I'm borrowing some low melt solder from the side here. When applying hot air, I want to keep an eye on this under the microscope, just to make sure we're not doing any damage to those two components. Our airspeed should be low. Success. And let me take that phone call quick. NorthridgeFix?
Hey, it's Jeff Nelson. Just wondering if that laptop's done.
Which one? Okay, so the connector is out. And I want to show you how it looks like under the microscope. Look at this. The two components are intact. They're in place. And this component is out. Now we're going to clean and install our new connector. Let's flip the board. Phone call again. NorthridgeFix?
Hi, I wanted to know how much you guys would charge for an iPhone 8 Plus to...
Okay, that's it. The hole doesn't have to be perfectly clean, as long as the legs of the connector will fit in. Do not spend 20 minutes trying to wick every single thing from the hole. Let's solder the sides while pressing the connector down, so we can secure the connector in place, and then we can solder the front ends. I'm gonna add some solder onto the tip, because I do not have three hands. It's one hand to press the connector down, one to hold the solder wire, and one to solder. Since I only have two, I'm gonna apply solder onto the tip. I'm gonna press down on the connector so that the connector pins in the front can be flat down with the pads. That's very, very important. And let's solder. Let's start by soldering the back here. Let's do the other side. Press down and solder the side. Now what I'm going to do, since I cannot see the pins like this, I'm gonna tilt my microscope so we can have a good view of what we're doing. Let's solder the front. I'm working in a very tight area. Very awkward, but we have to do it. I mean, this looks big on a microscope, but this stuff is very, very tiny. That's perfect. And again, we have to make sure we do not get flux inside those components, away from the hole. Flip the tip so it's clean and wipe away. Okay, now we have to solder the 5 pins, and for this I'm gonna use the very thin tip that I have. I went over those tips in another video, you can check it out. Okay, let's see if we can borrow some solder from here. Okay, I have a tiny bit of solder on the tip, so this is what I'm applying onto the pins. But the tip is very small, so it doesn't hold much solder on it. Now what we can do is we can use the other tip to go over the pins. This is soldered. This is soldered. This is soldered. This is soldered. So all of them are soldered. The joints may not look very pretty, but they're functional. Right now what we can do is clean the area with dry wipes and horse hair brush. Okay, so all pins are soldered on perfectly, very solid. We're gonna put this board back inside the phone and hope for the best. We want to monitor the meter here to see if there's any amps being drawn by the phone. If yes, then our job is done. Okay, so we do see some movement, 0.1, and that's because right here we do see 0.14, but that's because we do not have the battery plugged in, so there's nothing to actually charge. Let me plug this battery in and then we can try again. The battery is connected from the outside here. Okay, so it's working. The phone is now charging 0.38. Our job is done. and the light is on. Now I see a blank screen. That could be because the battery is fully drained and it's going to take some time for the screen to come on. Or it could be that the customer also has a bad screen. We do not know. So I'm going to leave this on the side for a while to see if the screen will come on, if the battery charges. This phone has been off for a long time, so the battery is drained down to the bones. Right now, the battery is charging at 0.38, and that's because I have it plugged in the front USB ports of the computer, slow charging. Right now, we're going to put this on the charger, and we're going to tell the customer that it may take some time for the battery to charge, since the battery has been off for a long time. It could also be that the screen is not good. We do not know. Right now, our job is to fix the charging port, and that's what we did. So that's it. Okay, so yesterday, right after we finished the phone, you noticed that the screen would not come on. The amp meter showed us that the amps being drawn by the phone is 0.2 to 0.4, which is about right, but the screen would still not turn on. Now, if you noticed also, there was a green light on top of the screen. I looked up what the green light is. Green light indicates that the battery is drained down to the max, so the phone needs some battery power in order to turn on. I told the customer to leave the phone overnight, and I came back this morning. The phone is charged and everything is good. So do not panic if you see a green light on the screen and the screen not powering on. It means the battery needs to be charged a bit before the phone can turn on. So I'm gonna put this back together, call the customer to come and pick up, and that's it. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in the next video.